I have to get my body back in shape. And then, I mean, I can't even hold a pen at this point. And much less a cutting tool. That would be suicide.
He immediately made a very strong impression on anybody because you can't overlook him. The way he was dressed, the way he walked, the way he talked.
Wow. Otherworldly, deeply, organically artistic.
He was a star in the village. It was like this wonderful sense of pure appearance, as existence as art, you know.
They told me I was an artist, knowing little of what they were getting me into. You know, I mean, sometimes I wonder if they said, "Oh, Eric, you're going to be a stockbroker," you know. You know.
I met Eric on the dance floor of a discotheque in 1969. He was the most exciting human being I'd ever seen. Eric could not have been anything but an artist. He was a quintessential artist in that respect. No matter what he did, whether it was going out to the store, going out for dinner, or even preparing a dinner, everything was done with an artistic bent, with a flair that said, this is art. This is who I am, and this is what I'm all about. I was very disappointed that he did not reach stature in the world of art during his lifetime. I think it was very, very difficult. Book art is not accessible art. It doesn't have the visual acuity that a painting has.
There are quite a few figures who, if they were in painting or sculpture, would be household names and constantly taught within the survey, at the survey level of art since 1945. And I think John Eric would be one of those figures.
The books started coming one after the other, and I started developing my painting style and experimenting with color, which I never had a problem really dealing with. I'm not afraid of color at all, never was.
Book art is when you use the concept of a codex and sequentiality of text, but you work with the thing to make something new out of it. John Eric draws you into the depths. Delving, that's the word for it. It's like mine shafts going in there. That I have not seen elsewhere. And then he's got this emblematic figure, which appears all the time, this floating figure. It's as if you go into another realm, and I think that that's what the figure is about. He was a very complex artist who was very much doing the things just at this moment.
What seemed unique about John Eric is that his investment in showing you a visual textuality that isn't word-based, and it's part of what releases the imagery in his books into such an imaginative place.
I can't think of one book artist that makes books like John Eric Broaddus. I mean, we have people that cancel text, they add text, they collage, and they do all kinds of alterations to the page. But I can't think of anybody that I have in the collection, nor I've ever seen anybody, that creates such constructivistic kinds of imagery by the use of cutouts, plus the integration of the visual theme. So he's completely unique. John Urich was really the catalyst. He was the reason why we started to collect artist books. That book, Xylocaine, has pace to it. You're going along and you're looking at different colors, and then you see pale colors, of course with all the cutouts and so forth, and the structural alterations to the page. Then bango, toward the end, you get these unbelievable bright day-glow colors, purples and reds, and just jump out at you. That's what it was all about. He was able to produce book art that had visual themes to it. I was a consultant for Key Pharmaceutical, and they asked me to chair a meeting called Asthma Update. They produced a publication. It had a lot of graphs in it and pictures and things in it that were reminiscent of Xylocaine. So I asked John Urich if he would do 3 books, and he agreed to that commission. Each book actually was slightly different than the other. We probably have more than 2,000 artist books. He's one of our stars.
The first book he ever composed, really got him started, was an alteration of Petronius Arbiter's Satyricon.
I just started digging in, cutting holes in it, using magic markers, using tempera, punching holes with my hole puncher. You know, I would do it on my lunch hour. And I took it on vacation with me until finally I got to the last page. It's over 200 and some pages. So that's like around 1972, 73. So it's, the magic marker has been kind of cooking ever since.
You know, there's this stamped message at the very beginning of the book where he says, property of the display department. That word display seems so specific to John Urich's work. He seems to be very aware of the way in which you would dress up a book or make a book sort of show itself off or give it outfits or give it a kind of visual, seductive, playful, theatrical quality. And he's doing that with that particular volume. So that idea of display seems really specific to his work. And all of the little punch pieces that he cut out of the book, he then, there's one little container on the back of the book, but the book itself lives inside of a little metal suitcase that has a plexiglass window in it, and under the window are all of the fragments that came out of the book. And when you rub it with this little rag, those fragments dance. And so to me that's, you know, just such a beautiful image of this process of deconstructing and playing and yet holding on to those bits as if, you know, nothing's going to be lost out of the system.
His very early books are very architectural. They're three-dimensional, but always with a little twist. And he made a whole series of those books. They're very hard on board. He showed his face very often on a stamp. He also wanted to have an impact, I think, with his own personality. He was not the way he showed himself, you know. He was not just evaporating into pure imagery, which had nothing to do with him. He always put again the stamp of himself into most of his books.
I feel like the art should sort of explain itself. And I like to keep the viewer kind of open and free to make their own judgments and their own decisions, instead of me trying to pump them with some kind of philosophy. And I don't want to, you know, I don't want to start developing one of these sort of shrinkology kind of philosophies, which I have run into far too many of. So that's what I keep trying to do. I mean, you know, it's like I don't ever feel like I'm going to be totally successful at it, but on the other hand, I know that I've had some successes.
I would imagine that even when he was a kid, he was doing stuff like that. Because basically what performers and artists do, if they're any good, is just keep doing what they were doing when they were kids.
He was always doing something around the house, creating things, and I know he used to have my dining room table there. He used to have that covered with stuff, doing things, and continuously.
I'd collect cardboard and I'd collect crepe paper. I saved my money for crepe paper. I mean, I probably kept the crepe paper company in business. This one, off to the dime store for silver stars and crepe paper. And I mean, I carried on like a maniac, you know, and the house would be a terrible mess. I didn't have any adults that really bothered me.
By the time he was born, his father had left, and so I don't think he ever even saw his dad. And he never asked about him, so I guess I never told him much about him. I don't think it bothered him much. The fact that he never ever did see him, you know, and he never was around, that probably he didn't miss him because he never knew him to miss him. He always was interested in ice skating, too. He loved ice skating. He used to go out to the ice skating rink all the time.
The figure skating has something to do with my art. Gliding from point A to point B, you know, and it's not necessarily a straight line. It can be a really incredible curve. It could be zigzags. It can be anything, but the idea that there's a quality of glide somehow.
When he was in the service over in Germany, that's the first thing that practically that I heard from him. He wanted me to send him his ice skates. He had them all packed ready to be sent to him whenever he knew where he was going to be over there. So I sent him his ice skates over in Germany when he was stationed there in the Army.
Then after the Army, I went home and laid around for a year. My mother was ready to kill me. I'd been in Europe for 2 years, and you go back to crummy little Detroit. A friend of mine said, you should come to New York for the weekend. I came for the weekend and went back home and started packing.
People congregated in New York out of the small towns because too many people peeking around corners in your small town. Between 1976 and somewhere maybe as late in pockets as 1990, there was an organic, integrous scene of artists who participated in each other's métiers. In other words, the photographers, such as Shayla Baykal and Peter Hujar, photographed the performers. The painters attended the plays of the performers. The performers went to the art galleries and collected and saw the work of the painters and the photographers. All of these people went to the poetry readings at St. Mark's. We participated in the films of the filmmakers. It was a cross-artistic scene.
When it was happening before it got commercialized, it was pretty exciting because it wasn't affecting just visual arts, it was also affecting performance, and it was affecting fashion, and it was affecting the perception of all those things.
Eric Broaddus was not artistic or creative because he was projecting it onto something outside. It was organically part of him. You got the feeling that he would make these amazing creations that he made, whether there was an audience or not.
When you follow the story of the words that he leaves in, it's not just an eye exercise, but it's with the hand as well. But then the eye goes deep inside. It's sort of like going into another dimension.
His attachment to the unique book, I think, can be also explained by the fact that he designed one-of-a-kind costumes that he himself wore that had no future. It was really a sort of a performance without a tomorrow. In fact, I think that's what led him to books. I think it's really an evolution from one-of-a-kind fashion designs and masquerades.
This was fantasy. This was to do with the imagination, making an appearance like a star, you know. He was so full of fun.
It was like the male species of birds that have the great plumage, that are the highly decorated ones.
He even made feathers, I remember, where they looked like real feathers, but they weren't, you know, and he would wear those, and people say, oh, well, what bird did you steal that from? And he'd say, oh. And they'd feel his feather, and they realized he made it.
The costume stuff that I've done over the years has gotten me more press. The costume stuff's got me in the New York Times, it's got me in the Post, it's got me in the Daily News, Italian L'Uomo, you know, dozens of magazines, color and black and white photographs, Women's Wear Daily. I mean, that's a very intrinsic part of my career.
Because the costumes were so personal and specific, they didn't seem bizarre when he wore them. They seemed
put on. They
natural.
were really part of his character.
They were part of the art and part of who he was.
The apartment, of course, told a lot about him. When he told me how to find it, he said there's a fortune teller on the first floor. The apartment was, mostly I remember, it was a very busy apartment. There was a lot of stuff going on. And it was all his whimsy.
It was the tiniest space with the most things in it, I think, including his wonderful books.
In the middle, he has had the working space, and then around there were all the way up to the ceiling. There were little compartments filled up with all these materials, what he was collecting and using for making his artwork.
Oh, the first impression, you entered it and you thought you were in a grim fairy tale. He had an alcove in which the bed was, I mean, held up by these birch trees and hanging things, and then the incense, and the books still today, when we open them, still have the smell, if I can say smell, of that incense that was in the apartment. I don't know what it is because I don't use incense. But so whenever I open a book, John Eric is here.
I was responsible for cleaning out the apartment and getting rid of the contents. I found a diary. It was from 1976. It brought back a lot of memories, and at the same time, it was an incredible indictment of the times. May 17th, a new week and many things to do. Outside the bar, Ray Johnson and Greg Day were talking, and I went over to say hello. Ray is doing quite well in the art field and is publishing a book soon. He invited me to join him at the Anvil, the New York version of the Roman circus. It did have a circus atmosphere about it. I heard about it, but I'd never been there before. Well, there were boring live torture acts going on and porno films in the back room, but nobody of interest in the audience. I did find out that Ray is from Detroit. He doesn't like Detroit much better than I do. May 28th, lots of people in the village. Ran into John Hunt, Matt, Billy Kostoulis, Peter Hujar, and lots of others. Found out Peter is another Libra. God, they're coming out of the walls. Also Ray Johnson and Robert Rauschenberg. Peter suggested I give a big Libra Aries party in October. Sounds good. I ended up meeting someone on Christopher Street and going home with them. We had great fun. June 3rd, ran into a young man I had met last week in Ties on Fifth Avenue, and he asked me back to the apartment where he was working. So I said okay, and we went and had a joint, and the next thing I knew, he had his clothes off and we were having sex. And then it was all over and I was out the door. 1, 2, 3.
I believe his flower especially bloomed in the 70s when everyone was being very open sexually. There was an excitement in the gay community. It was as if everyone had found something new. Studio 54 was the place, and it sort of defined New York nightlife.
You were in the center of a happening place, and there was always something happening. There was always some disco to go to, some club, some theater event. Eric loved to put on the costumes, and I would kind of go along, and we'd run up and down the stairs and down the stairs and up the stairs and down the stairs. Nobody ever knew what they were doing at these discos. In Eric's mind, if one of the great hostesses of the disco scene looked at him for a moment and said hello, that made the whole thing worth it, you know? So it was part of that energy of sound and music and lights, and that was another aspect of theater. Everyone was intermingling with this energy, a sexual energy where the bodies were intertwining and the music was pulsating.
June 8th, I ran into Ray Johnson and we talked, and then Daniel came dashing by. So I went with him to Crisco Disco, a new club on 11th Avenue and 22nd Street. There is dancing and drinks all night long. It's quaint plexiglass country western backroom disco. Something for everyone. June 24th, we walked downtown to a little bar called Barnabas Rex and had a few drinks. I went to Crisco Disco to see what I could get into. I met this lovely man and went home with him up in the East 70s. Air-conditioned and cool. So far, that is the only way I've beaten the heat. June 25th, went out to Crisco again. I met this sexy man who turned out not to be at all sexy. The dullest individual I have ever met. You can't win every time. I am virtually a sex maniac these days. That's about all you can do in this heat, and not even that. June 26th. This weekend, the gay parade is taking place. Things had started to quiet down in the neighborhood, so off to the Crisco again. It is very cruisy, which is nice. I had my eye on this lovely young Latin-looking man, and we eventually met, Pablo, and he came home with me. We spent the entire day in bed.
There was this sense of a sexual revolution. It was sort of like a time of the Weimar Republic, like come to the cabaret, you know. I was working on a play, Tropical Fever in Key West. Eventually that evolved into Eric creating these wonderful sets. Eric had a sense of theater and a sense of art and the blending of those two. He was one of the late members of the Angels of Light, so there was this sense of glitter and fun, you know, having a lot of fun and a sense of the absurd, absurdist theater, that it wasn't all meant to be taken seriously. He had a great uproarious laugh, you know, and a kind of twinkle in the eye.
They were mad. They were kind of mad shows. You never knew what was going to happen. I met a lot of crazies, and I learned a lot about the theater doing those shows. They were like free shows, and we did them at the Theater for the New City. And the angel shows were all, I mean, costumes were made out of cardboard and glitter, and the sets were made out of cardboard and glitter. And I mean, we must have gone through 1,000, 2,000 pounds of glitter. I mean, it was not a little bit of glitter, it was a lot. Everybody did their own costume, and they were all outrageous.
I needed someone to make a set for me. I didn't have the capability to design it or build it, and he was offering There was also a budgetary factor. I felt we could do this pretty cheaply, and I managed to get him to do it for free. And one funny thing about him was that he was very fond of hanging these backdrops that he made with paper clips. And, you know, paper clips don't last very long.
The book France interested us very much. The reason was that it was the use of an existing book which was transformed into a very rare and unusual book, and yet it was basically made from a guide of France.
He worked 4 years. He didn't just slap it out, overnight. I mean, he was working on it, waiting until he had again an inspiration. This is just one of the truly great artist books that was done in the past, I would say 20 years.
I was really very fascinated about the creativity of his bookwork and decided right away to invite him to come to Germany and give him an exhibition in Düsseldorf there. I wanted that we would make a book in an edition, so we have had the idea to, because he could not make like 20 or 25 copies, or I think we even planned at the beginning 30 copies. He could not make 30 copies like all the same. He was not interested in doing it, and secondly, it would not have been possible physically. The whole process started in 1981, and he died before finishing this book. The last 3 pages were not cut out except for 5 copies. And the other ones, all the first pages, as you see here, beautifully hand-colored by John Eric.
It's beautiful, but it's unlike anything else that Broaddus ever created.
It's actually the differences among his books that in part, I think, contribute to my feeling that he's a serious book artist and deserves serious critical recognition, because he doesn't repeat himself.
I think that was one of Eric's most accomplished feats. He started out appropriating a book that already existed. He was able to manipulate it in such a way that it became another art form. He was working with found objects, dealing with the problems of finance. He lived from day to day. Friends and myself contributed to his needs. We supported him, and later on in his career, he used the barn up at my house for many, many, many summers as his studio workshop for painting and for everything else that he did.
Tony gave me a painting of his after he died. It's a glorious thing. Behind it is hardboard, and then there are 2 blocks of wood there, and so you can hang it this way, or then you can turn it totally around this way. So I hang it from time, sometimes I hang it triangularly, and the thing makes sense from every angle that you go. It makes sense.
When I met him, that was probably about 84. he was still in wonderful spirits. And you could see that in the books, because they were still very colorful. That it changed, you know, when he became more apprehensive, the color kind of went out of many of his work.
I am now at another turning point, orbiting and rotating at once. There is no publisher in sight. I am painting, working on some new books, and optimistically unclear as to what will happen next.
After his death, I discovered he made a series of Xerox things. And in this book, he, for the first time, seemed to express that he is afraid of AIDS. He never mentioned it personally to me. We never talked about it. But in these few pages where he used newspaper text and so, from the cutouts of the words, there was no doubt that he was afraid that he might have contracted it. But it's very kind of, it makes my heart heavy just to see that I was not able to help him in any way in that respect.
I just don't have, the strength is not with me like it was last summer. And I hope that I can get it back. I just don't quite know how yet. But I will find out. I will figure that out. I don't know. I mean, I hope I can survive all this, which I may be able to do. I don't know. I should be able to do it. You know, it's deep down in my little brain. You know, it's like, just keep, you know, keep your head on straight. Don't panic. You know, try to get, you know, better.
When I first heard about AIDS, I thought to myself, the most beautiful people, the most creative people, and the most fun people will die first. The most beautiful people for the obvious reasons that they're the most desired sexually, and the others because they're the most uninhibited.
Never did it occur to me that the world that I knew, this art world, it was a community. I mean, I can tell you, there was a true community of artists that lived on the Lower East Side and worked on the Lower East Side and attended each other's functions, collaborated with each other. Never did I think that there wouldn't be anybody left.
It was like being at war, and like people were disappearing off the face of the earth
the same
so
thing
fast.
happened in the Vietnam War, the Second World War, the Vietnam War.
Yeah.
And the people were gone, and nobody, when they came back from the war, or, you know, of course, wars do have a tendency to end, whereas AIDS does not seem to have this big ending. But
it's the loss, though. I mean, I don't.
Nobody has the time to. Nobody has ever gone into how you would live with this loss of people and kind of what it means in terms of your own life. I don't think it's something that people are able to comprehend.
I don't really ever want to go back to the hospital again. I've been in twice. And 3 strikes and you're out, you know, that's about it. I don't want all those things sticking in me. I don't want people floating around me I don't know. There's not much they can do for me. I don't want to be there. I'm afraid of being sick. I mean, that's the part that's what really scares me and frightens me, is being sick. As far as dropping dead, it's all over. That's the lucky part.
Am I going to get done what I want to get done? Or am I going to be gone? And I'm at that point right now, it's 50-50.
His body was falling apart completely. But he was so there, so completely and utterly focused as here and now, and not tomorrow, not in an hour's time, now. And you know, he impressed upon me. I mean, I found the contact that I had with him is something which is, well, it's deep in my heart. I mean, what happened there.
He kind of felt that he was going to single-handedly overcome whatever it was and come through.
He was kind of really heroic about it till this very last time when he just decided to go out of the hospital, because we talked a few days before, and he says, you know, I will go to that show. I don't care what the doctor says. And I said, Eric, you're totally right. And he says, that's what I will do. He was in a wheelchair, and he knew that he would be dead in a very short time, and he was surrounded by his art, by the beautiful things. That was the last time I saw him.
Towards the end, I saw him every day, and I was with him when he died. I was holding his hand when he died. And he went very peacefully. He was very weakened at that time. That was at St. Vincent Hospital. And another friend was there. And so I'm still to this day happy that I was there when this had to happen, this sad event.
I ask myself every day just about, why did he have to go? I mean, he had so much to give. And I was so enthused with all his work and stuff. Why him? I don't know. That I'll never understand, but that's what happened.
I think he will have an impact. I think he brought something new. People will see this, and yes, he will inspire people.
There is no doubt about that. You can look at any big catalogs or anything, his name will come up. I think he goes on living through his art. And we can't say anything better for an artist than that, can we? I mean, that is what they were hoping to achieve, and he certainly achieved it.
There are a number of scholarly books that have just come out that deal with his work. It only shows what an incredible mind and an incredible genius that he was. Eric's stature in the world of art.
And yes, he will be remembered. Oh yes, he had an impact. I mean, he was an artist. And the book art is one manifestation of the whole thing. I mean, what I've seen when he showed.
All I wish that people could see his work. He was truly magical in what he was able to do. It is so incredible that out of a little book, he was able to turn it into something that was out of this world. And so I wish...
Eric was such an apparition that I think I still see him on the street, particularly Christopher Street. I'm sure if there are ghosts walking up and down that street, he is one of them, you know.